My name is Shishir Agrawal. I am the product manager for VirtualSRX, part of the data center security team here. I have Venu Jang with me as well. He's the technical marketing engineer. And over the next half an hour, what we will try to do is give you an overview of VirtualSRX, kind of the use cases, and show you a demo in the end. Okay. I know some of you already requested for where you can download VirtualSRX. So Venu is going to pass on a USB stick with a vSRX image, as well as if you go online and just search for vSRX trial image, you can actually download a 60-day trial for VirtualSRX. And there's also a 30-day trial for the advanced security services. So again, we'll give you the USB key, but it's also available online in case you want to go and try it out. Okay, so VirtualSRX, I don't know how many of you are familiar with SRX and Juniper's security portfolio, but essentially VirtualSRX is SRX in a virtualized form factor. Think of it as providing all of the key functionality features that we have on SRX in a virtual form factor. So we provide all of the core perimeter security features, which are firewall, NAT, VPN, routing, because it's essentially running Junos. We provide all of the content security features, so things like antivirus, IPS, web filtering, anti-spam, and then we provide all of the application security features like app ID, so the ability to identify applications and then apply policies tied to those applications, app QoS and app track. So it's a true next generation firewall. All of the features that we have on our physical SRX, we provide in the virtual SRX form factor. Fundamentally, once you are logged in, you are in the CLI, you would not even know whether it's a physical box or a virtual box. Okay. In addition to that, to manage the virtual SRX, we have two applications that are built on top of Junos Space platform. The first one is Virtual Director, which is used to manage the vSRX instances. And the second one is Security Director, which is used to manage the policies across both physical and virtual firewalls. So with that, I want to talk to you about the latest release that we did about 2 weeks back. So VirtualSRX, as you know, Juniper's big focus is on performance. We launched 2 terabit firewall. We announced it at RSA. We started shipping it back in July. With vSRX, we are the industry's fastest virtual firewall. So we can do 17 gigs of firewall large packet performance and 4 gig IMX. Nobody else in the industry can do that. This is based on VMware 5.5 plus SRIOV, leveraging 3.4 gigahertz server, Dell server. One of the key points here is also about efficiency. So we can do this level of performance using only 2 virtual CPUs. So I have done some competitive analysis. If you look out on what other competitors are doing, the best I have seen in the data sheet is somebody can do a 10 gig virtual firewall, but they are using 8 virtual CPUs. And as you can imagine, it's all about using less resources in a virtualized x86 environment. So given the fact that we can do 4 gig IMX in 2 virtual CPUs, we have the lowest TCO in the industry as well. So very efficient from that perspective.
So the virtual appliance, does it just straight VMware, or is it obviously probably KVM?
Yes.
I'm not going to say Hyper-V. I already know the answer to that. But I mean, like using and Matt may know how to do this, but like in Vagrant, anything like that, being able to spin that stuff up?
Yeah, so we support both VMware and KVM. Actually, Erin, she's our kind of automation guru here. We just launched a video with Vagrant and Ansible with VirtualSRX. We can send you a pointer to that.
Figure that might be a good project to work on playing on. So
Yes. So again, we are very focused on automation. I mean, Erin, we can have an offline discussion about all the automation things we can do with VirtualSRX. But definitely, Vagrant, Ansible, we support all of that.
So the throughput is limited at 4 gig, even if I were to add more VPUs?
Okay, so that's a good question. So today we can only do 2 virtual CPUs with vSRX. So we cannot add more vCPUs to VirtualSRX. But again, in our short-term roadmap, we want to extend adding more virtual CPUs to the vSRX instance. So we expect by end of the year, early next year, we should be able to do at least 20 gigs of firewall IMX by adding more virtual CPUs. So our goal is to add like 10 vCPUs and 10 gig VRAM to be able to scale up the virtual firewall instance.
Great.
So we've just been told all about the fun of Intel's DPDK And is that something that's figuring into your roadmap as well to
Yes, again, good
take
question.
advantage
So,
of?
yeah, so I think Doug briefly touched upon the architecture. So the way we are able to get this performance is essentially we moved on to a totally new architecture, which leverages Linux OS. And the Junos control plane is run as a virtual machine on top of KVM, and all the services are run natively on Linux. And then we're actually leveraging today things like DPDK and SRIOV already because of the fact that now we are based on a Linux-based OS. So we are already taking advantage of DPDK and SRIOV.
Okay.
Did it answer your quick question?
Yeah, one of the things I'm interested in is that the 4 gig versus I know what they're starting to get with DPDK is you'd expect that this will grow fairly fast even without extra vCPUs, but more just because the processors are starting to be able to do a heck of a lot more for you.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. The other thing is we have also demonstrated more of a density test. So we have been, with using 8 instances on a single server, we have demonstrated an 80 gig firewall. So essentially, we can scale linearly as you add more instances of vSRX on a server. And again, this is pretty amazing. I don't think anybody else has demonstrated an 80 gig virtual firewall on a single server. This was based on a Dell 2.4 gigahertz server running 8 instances.
80 gig, 8 instances.
Yeah, so this was based on a 2.4 gigahertz server. If you use a better server, you'll probably get a higher performance. So on a 2.4 gigahertz servers, we get about 10 gigs of large packet.
Obviously not all running on the same host.
No, this is all running on the same host.
And it's...
Yeah, this is on a single server. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I think in addition to the performance, which is obviously our big focus, in addition to a full feature firewall, it's very important for us to make sure that this works in the complete virtualization ecosystem. So we break it down into 4 different vectors. In terms of platforms, we support VMware 5.1.5.5 today. We are working on 6.0, supporting 6.0. For KVM, we already support KVM with CentOS and Ubuntu. We also want to support Hyper-V going forward. In terms of orchestration, we integrate with VMware's vCenter or vRealize Orchestrator today. We already have plugins for OpenStack as well as CloudStack. For policy and orchestration and SDN, again, we expose a lot of our APIs, so you can interact with VirtualSRX using those APIs via netconf or REST APIs. We have Virtual Director, as I mentioned earlier. We also have a GUI called JWeb, which you can use to interact with vSRX. I think Prateek touched briefly upon Contrail and integration with vSRX. So we do integrate with Contrail today. There's a whole demo available on YouTube. We integrate with that. And again, on our short-term roadmap, we are working with VMware to do NSX integration as well with VirtualSRX. The last piece here is we want to make sure that we support the major public cloud providers. So we already support vCloud Air. We are working to be officially certified on vCloud Air. And we are actively working on Amazon AWS right now. And down the line, we also want to support Azure. So again, with all of these kind of 4 key pillars covered, we believe we have a very comprehensive, complete virtual firewall solution. Okay, so let me quickly move on to four use cases that I want to talk to you about. vSRX, in some sense, is a Swiss Army knife. I have seen a lot of use cases around it, but I'll just focus on 4 key use cases today. So the first one is enterprise private cloud. Obviously, a lot of enterprises are already virtualizing their data centers. Most of them are virtualizing using VMware. So we already support VMware today. Traditionally, what they want to do in this virtualized data center is essentially segment and microsegment their network. They're doing it today with a physical firewall, which doesn't really fit with the whole notion of agility that you want in a virtualized data center. So essentially, the idea is pretty straightforward. Instead of a physical firewall, for the departments or divisions you want to segregate, you can essentially put a virtual SRX and provide the level of security that you want in this environment. So imagine if you have to spin up a new department, it becomes very straightforward to spin up a virtual firewall in front of that VMs or applications that you want to protect, as opposed to doing a physical box, rack and stack, which can take weeks.
So do you guys have a best practice recommendation for placement of these appliances? If I have, 16, 32 hosts, or whatever in a cluster, or how many hosts, or how many appliances per cluster, or anything like that? Any kind of guidelines, or?
Yeah, so we do publish some metrics around how many vSRX you can put on a server. We also have a VMware deployment guide.
Like every host should have one, or not every host, or?
So it depends on your performance requirements and how much firewalling you want to do. But we do provide some kind of sizing guides to help customers to deploy and figure out how many vSRXs you need. How do you do that level of segmenting?
So it sounds like this is not like a one VM per host type of deal that you just steer things in here with either VXLANs or VLANs. Is that an accurate statement? Like a DV port group for like one tenant goes to a DV port group where all the routing's done on the vSRX. Is that a correct statement?
So again, in this case, the way we are doing it is that you actually instantiate a virtual SRX on one host, which becomes another VM, right? We are not truly doing a distributed firewall functionality, which is a kernel-based firewall.
So it's not like in path of the kernel, like some things are. So you actually deploy a VM, like I guess like a per tenant, I guess you can do. Is that typical in the way you're running this?
Yes. Typically, it would be a per tenant basis or per department basis.
Okay.
That's the typical use case. We used to actually have a product where we could do a kernel-based firewall.
Okay, so that's how you're able to scale across multiple hypervisors then, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But if you were using the VRX as a router within the host itself, it makes sense to spin up instance on each host for optimal routing as well, right?
Yeah, so typical deployment is for each host, you'll spin up a vSRX instance, and then you are protecting those set of applications or servers with that vSRX instance.
And you also said earlier, I think, was the whole question about going back up to your spine for routing to your neighbor on the same host or anything like that. It all does it within this appliance, so it doesn't go up. It just stays within the host.
Correct.
Okay. Assuming that you had an appliance running on that host.
Exactly. You have to make sure that you have vSRX as a VM running.
Otherwise, it's going to go. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I'll move on fast because I want to make sure that we have enough time for the demo. An extension of this use case is really the public and hybrid cloud use case. You have a lot more tenants now. You have two use cases here. Essentially, all the tenants that are hosted in the cloud, you can put a virtual firewall in front of that, and essentially that serves as the perimeter gateway, providing firewall or any kind of advanced security services, IPS, AppSecure, whatever they want to have. In addition, you can use vSRX to create a hybrid cloud environment because we support IPsec VPN. So essentially, you can create a secure connectivity between the applications that are hosted in the cloud and the applications that you have in your on-prem. So this allows you to create a hybrid cloud as well.
And those are terminated at the appliances?
Yeah, so here you can have vSRX. In both places, you can either have vSRX or here you can have physical SRX as well. Okay. So as long as you have SRXs on both ends, you're good. The next two use cases are vCPE and UCPE. I think some of the previous speakers briefly touched upon it. And the whole idea is this is for the managed service provider customers who are trying to move to SDN and provide services, NFV services. Traditionally, these service providers, they provide a branch CPE box on customer prem, and they are managing those boxes. Those boxes are typically a fixed function box. So the issue with that is that you have a separate firewall box, you have a separate maybe WAN acceleration box. If you want to provide new services, then you have to ship a new box to the branch office, which takes a lot of time. It's a lot of CapEx and OpEx for the service provider. With the move to SDN, essentially you can provide all of those services in your hosted cloud or data center by just having a simple net device at the customer prem, and then you backhaul all the traffic back into the cloud. And then you can have vSRX as one of the key VNFs providing differentiated security services for each of those tenants, essentially. So for example, customer 1 might just need a basic firewall. Customer 2 might need firewall plus IPS. This allows you to provide those differentiated services in a much more agile and efficient manner, right? So from a service provider perspective, it helps them to save on CapEx and OpEx. From a customer perspective, now they can get these services much faster because it becomes much more of a push button thing. Typically in this environment, service provider would also provide a self-service portal where the customer actually can go in, log into that portal, order services. On the back end, everything is automated, so those services would turn on and get kind of deployed at the customer prem. So this is what we call as vCPE, which is essentially the services that were earlier running on the customer prem. Those are virtualized. They are running in the service provider's data center. A flavor of that is UCPE, because for some customers, you might not want to backhaul the data or traffic back to the cloud. So essentially, those services will still run on customer prem, but now they are being run in a virtualized manner on a generic x86 hardware. So again, they have a device, which is a generic x86 device. It can run a bunch of VMs. vSRX becomes one of the VMs that they can run on this on-prem device. And again, all of the benefits that you saw earlier in vCPE essentially apply here. We call that as UCPE, Universal CPE Device.
So this is like a next-gen firewall for the most part, right? So to do all the fancy Layer 7 features that...
Yeah, so that's broadly vSRX. I mean, vSRX is a true next-generation firewall. It can do firewalling plus all of the features that I showed in the first slide.
Very interesting.
For a virtual firewall.
And this is just some mock-ups of, again, the idea is that with vSRX, customers, like service providers can offer value-added services. So we just put some mock-ups around. Imagine that you have a self-service portal that service provider offers to the end customer. Customers can really come into this portal. They see a menu of security services. They can go in. There are some bundles already defined. Imagine like silver, gold, platinum kind of bundles offering firewall, L7 services. They can go into this portal, pick whatever they want, add it to their cart, and essentially purchase on the fly. And things get automatically deployed on the backend. So this allows service providers to actually generate additional additional revenues by providing these value-added services. Okay. I think I already touched briefly upon this. So we have for orchestration and management SD and VD. VD is an application on top of Space, which is used to manage the VMs. It works on the VMware environment. SD is the tool that's used to manage all the policies, and Venue is going to show you a demo of that. Again, this is very important because customers want to have a single tool that can manage their policies across both physical and virtual firewalls. They don't want to have two different tools. SD is the single pane of glass view or tool that helps to manage the policies across both your physical and virtual firewalls.
So it'll sync my physical firewalls, the same rules that I've applied, it'll push them all the way down to virtual as well.
Exactly.
Is that by default, or is that just depending on how you lay the environment out?
You can actually configure it and set it the way you want it.
Okay.
When you have, I'm sorry, go ahead. When you have NSX integration, when that happens, are you going to have something where you might have like a east-west firewalling and then like a north-south firewalling with a perimeter firewall if you have a physical one, by any chance, where it would sync roles or somewhat with the physical and virtual?
Yeah, so that's what we are looking at. Our idea is just to be very clear, right? With NSX integration, most of the integration would happen for the L4 to L7 services. So NSX would still do the distributed firewall functionality, and to do the advanced services processing, you'll punt the traffic to, let's say, vSRX. But what we are looking at is with SD, can we really manage even the NSX policies within the whole SD environment? So from a customer perspective, they just go into SD and they are able to manage not only the layer 4 to layer 7 policies, but also the NSX rules that they are trying to set.
So you'd push it down in your software and it would go to everywhere, correct?
Yeah, that's our vision. So that's what we are looking at.
Very nice.
So you're looking at basically replacing the edge functionality in NSX is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Obviously not the distributed firewall piece, just leverage that, be done with it.
Yeah, we will definitely want to integrate
modules.
Yeah, exactly. We want to leverage the distributed NSX functionality.
That makes sense.
And provide the L4 to L7 integration.
Okay.
I think you are already familiar with automation. We expose all of the APIs. You can interact with vSRX using all the APIs, NetConf, REST APIs. I think you have heard a lot about automation today. It's again the fact that we are running Junos, all of those functionality in terms of automation, we already get it as part of that. And I mentioned about Vagrant, Ansible. We have demos to show you how we do that with vSRX. And obviously, we integrate with Contrail. That's our SDN controller. We have integration with OpenStack and CloudStack. So again, the idea here is that you can service chain with Contrail. You can provide differentiated services to all the tenants that you might have in the overlay network. And again, from a service provider perspective, even in this environment, they can offer those value-add services that I showed you earlier with Firewall or any kind of L7 services. So I think I'll pause here. I'll hand it over to Venue so we can go over the demo. Hopefully you captured the main key points around fastest firewall, very rich. We are using only 2 vCPUs, so it's very efficient. Plus we integrate with the whole ecosystem to make it, yeah.
I have to ask you quickly about SSL VPN support because I get questions on that all the time. Is that on the roadmap?
So we are looking at some options on the physical SRX side on how we can do that, but we don't have anything right now that we can share with you in terms of SSL VPN integration. So